Good morning, my friends. I'm Pastor Ben Hayes from First Baptist Church, Dadeville, Alabama, bringing you our thought for the day on a magnificent Monday. I have to apologize for the video on Friday, no sound to it. And man, it was so good. I want you to know I hate that you didn't get to hear what I had to say. But anyway, hopefully this will work today. We're in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, picking up in verse 18. Now, remember what Paul's been doing. He's been talking about this relationship between mature Christians and younger Christians. He's been talking about in verses 14 and after idolatry. Now understand something. Most of our sin comes from idolatry. Some of you say, well, preacher, I've never bowed down to an idol in my life. No, you probably haven't created an idol of gold or wood or silver or stones, but sometimes our families become our idols. Sometimes our jobs become our idols. Sometimes the church becomes our idol. Anything that we put before our relationship with the Father is an idol. And so Paul is bringing all of this together to help us to understand this issue that we have in the responsibility that we have. Let me put it that way. The responsibility that we have to take care of younger brothers and sisters in Christ. Remember earlier we talked about how if I eat meat sacrificed to idols and it offends a brother, then I'll never eat meat again. Well, listen to what Paul says. Observe Israel after the flesh. Are not those who eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar? Now think about this for a minute. When the Jews would bring their sacrifices, the priest would get a portion, God would get a portion, and the people would get a portion. They could take that meat and they could eat it amongst their family members. It was a celebration, communion with the Father. Okay? Much like what was going on in the pagan worship rituals. Look what Paul says in verse 19. What am I saying then? That an idol is anything, or what is offered to idols is anything? Rather, that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to God. Now let's pause there for just a minute. He is comparing but not equating the Jewish sacrificial system with the pagan sacrificial system. Only to the extent that he's saying, well, when the Jewish people do it, it's a part of their worship ritual. So you understand why young believers who have come out of that pagan worship practice might be caused to stumble into that. Now he said, but listen, am I saying that that an idol is anything? No, they're not. They're pieces of wood, they're pieces of stone, they're pieces of gold or silver, jewels, whatever it might be, but they're really not anything. And so the food that's offered to them, that's not a big deal. But he says, get this. The things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to God. Now, I want you to understand something here. Demonic forces are real. Demonic influence is real. The demons are at work in our world. And they are using false religions. They're using false teachers. They're using these pagan rituals, even today, to deceive people and to keep them away from a relationship with Jesus Christ. And Paul is saying these Gentiles, when they're sacrificing in their pagan temples, they're sacrificing to demons and not to God. And look what he says. I do not want you to have fellowship with demons. Look, worship is about fellowship. Practicing the rituals of Judaism was about fellowship with God, same as it was with the Gentiles. And so we come together as believers and we worship not with sacrifices, but with the Lord's Supper. Now, when we get over to chapter 11, he's going to go into more detail with the Lord's Supper, how important it is, and how we should take it so very seriously. But look what he says in verse 21. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the Lord's table and of the table of demons. Even if you say, well, those pagan idols are nothing, so I can go and I can participate, and then I can come back to the church and I can partake of the Lord's Supper. Paul says, no, you can't do that. Because as Jesus said, we cannot serve two masters, because we'll love one and hate the other, or we'll hate one and love the other. We must make a choice. And our choice as believers is to worship God, the Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the creator of the universe, the one who gave his Son so that all who believe in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. We'll pick up here tomorrow, but think about this today. Be blessed. I'll see you then.